Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Let the Rest Burn. This is Coco Nelson, and I am here with two amazing women, Emily and Steph. They are Cycle Chats. It's a podcast to help women break the cycle by empowering them through education and inspiring them to start changing the narrative. We're going to dig into what that means and how you ladies found yourself here. But first of all, I would love for you to just say hello, introduce yourself, and tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do outside of just the podcast as well. Emily, why don't you take it off first?
Me first. Okay, cool. Yeah. I usually ask Stephanie.
Look at that.
So my name is Emily. Outside of the podcast, I am a college professor. I teach at two local colleges here in Florida. I teach theater education, so I'm inspiring the next generation of theater goers, non-theater goers, the importance of what live theater is to our society, to each other, what it means to your celebration of self, and just what it really can do to help kind of build bridges between people. So that is kind of what I do outside of the podcast. That's my day job, so to be, so to say.
Yeah, and I'm Stephanie, and my day job is I am lead artist and manager over at a glam studio. So it is a full-scale makeup and production house. And we do anything from on-location weddings to video shoots to special effects to maternity shoots, you name it, we do it. We do hair and makeup as well. But I particularly just do makeup. Have been a makeup artist for, gosh, I think like 14 years now we're going on. So been in the industry quite a long time. And then I also, from time to time, will teach children's theater, because that is actually how Emily and I met, was through a children's theater. But it unfortunately closed down during the pandemic. Mm-hmm. And so as we figured out what we were doing, I did find myself in another studio, and I just do that once a week. I teach the little kiddos how to sing and act. So that's it. That's what I do. Yeah.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Okay, so before we dig into what you had to burn to be the ladies that you are today, tell me what brought you to the podcast Cycle Chats. How did this emerge for you ladies?
So it's kind of a weird story.
I love those.
Yeah. So Stephanie and I should probably start with how we met. Stephanie and I were both working professionally at a theater that has since closed, but it was an old movie theater. And so there was two separate theaters. Stephanie was working backstage. I was on stage. And every day I had this ritual where I'd go and I'd put on this pink lipstick. And without my knowledge, Stephanie was watching me every day.
The coat rack.
Yeah.
On my side of the theater. Yeah.
So one day I approached her. She always says that I approached her angrily when she recounts this story.
It caught me off guard.
I don't remember it this way, but it's fine. We each have our own reality that we're living within.
What's funny is I think that now that Emily and I have gotten to know each other more, I see it a lot differently. I think I was already feeling fearful that she was going to see me stalking her through the coat rack. And then B, I just wasn't expecting her to be so forward. Mm-hmm. And so as our relationship has grown, I have seen that when Emily needs something and she's on a mission, and much like myself, it comes off very direct. Mm-hmm. So I will retract my statement that I was assaulted by Emily, and rather
I was
say
stalked by Stephanie.
She was a woman.
I will not retract that statement.
She was a woman on a mission. So.
Yeah, I was a woman on a mission. But Stephanie is a makeup artist, like she said, and I needed somebody to do my makeup for the wedding. So basically I went up to her thinking I was smiley and happy, and then I was like, I heard you do makeup. And
she started with, hey, and I was like, ah, and so already
I've been found out. But it ended up that we exchanged phone numbers. I didn't message her for a while. I still wasn't getting married for another year and a half or two, so it was a long time away. I am type A, and I needed it to get done now. Yeah. Nice. And then we had also known each other sporadically through a really good friend of ours. So I had known who Stephanie was. That was my first interaction with her. And then a few months later, that same friend got me a job at that children's theater that Stephanie had already worked at.
Oh,
And
wow.
one day we just like, she was sitting there. I kind of approached her and I think I just asked her point blank, like a crazy question of why she wasn't with this other man. And I think that just kind of started the friendship. I think that's what it was. I remember being
Which
on
man?
stage.
Where's this?
You know which man. Not the man that you were with, the other man.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
it was girls' night, and we were
Yeah.
so we had gotten to know each other. We were in the car, and she's like, "You've been saying this guy's name a lot. Like, what's the deal?" And I was
Yeah.
like, "What do you mean? What's the deal?" It's a story that in and
Yeah,
of itself
yeah.
was
So
crazy,
then,
wonderful, and here we are
yeah.
now.
So we
several
we
years
fa-
later.
we fast forward that we become very good friends, and the pandemic happens. We lose our jobs. That children's theater closes. I was
Mhm.
out in California on a national tour that I'm part of called Old Jews Telling Jokes, and
Love
that
it.
had to close early. Yes, it's super fun. It's a great show. And that closed early, so I had to come home. So I lost that job. And
goodness.
as Stephanie says, the best, we were kind of swimming in a pool of nothingness with margaritas and martinis, not knowing what to do. And about 6 months into the pandemic, our same friend that kind of introduced us was like, "Hey, do you want to start like a menstruation subscription box company?"
Actually, what
What?
happened is that
Oh,
she
that's
texted
true.
us that she had her period. And
That's
she
true.
was like,
Ah.
"Man, I don't want to leave the house. I just want something to come to me." And like Emily's
Mm.
like, "Oh,
And
like
then,
a
yes.
subscription box?" And then it just
And then
and
Boom.
then
it
I
spiraled.
think I said I was like, "Oh, are we making this a business?" And I think it was a joke at first, and then it wasn't.
Yeah.
And then all of
Yeah.
a sudden I was
Then,
like,
then we dived in. We really
We
we
did.
went straight to the deep end.
Mm.
And we opened that business, which has since closed. Times were hard, and we tried
Mhm.
our best. But Cycle Chats kind of grew out of that idea, so that it was
Mm.
the education aspect of that
Yes.
box, so that people who that were ordering the box could come get education about their cycles by people that actually went and studied this, and we could learn more on the journey as well. And then, like Stephanie says, Cycle Chats had her own idea of what she wanted to do, who she wanted to be, the questions
Oh,
she
yeah.
wanted to ask. And within that first interview, the whole game changed, because not
Mm.
once did I ask the question of your first period story, which was kind of the whole thing. So it just, she really knew who she wanted to be, and it's been 2.5 years, and
Wow.
we haven't looked back.
Yeah.
Mm. I love that. I love a good origin story, right? Like the founding story of who you've become today. And that's part of this podcast to a degree. Like Let the Rest Burn is about like what actually got us to the place in which we have been founded. And I think it's a journey, right? We're going to continue to burn some shit to the ground as things go. So I love hearing what's led you to today. So then we can talk about like those moments that were hard, those moments that kind of pushed you to your edge and got you to a place where you get to be in this space of living at the edge of your fullness, right? And Let the Rest Burn, I don't know if I told you this separately, but it's a quote from Glennon Doyle. And it's about women needing to kind of detox themselves from everything that isn't them and step into their fullness and then let the rest burn. It's a really powerful quote. I got it tattooed right here.
I love that.
Oh, did that hurt the rib cage?
It didn't actually. It wasn't too bad, but it was
good for you.
It was also like I was already kind of buzzing because I think I had a couple of other tattoos that got done at the same time. So it was like my body was already in that space.
Like in that elevated space.
Yep.
Yeah.
Exactly. And it was super quick. I had such a good tattoo artist. And so I love having these conversations, especially with women who have taken what I would say like an unconventional path to life. I think there's a lot of paths that are quite unconventional, but in general, these conversations get really interesting when we figure out, how did I land here? Like, how did I arrive to where I am today? And full disclosure to my audience, I met these ladies at PodFest when at a conference for Podfesters that we were at. And it's like, I did like an Emily to Steph, I'm pretty sure. I was like,
Yeah.
wait a second. Tell me what your human design is. And don't even ask me why or how that started. There was just, for some reason, I was asking somebody if you knew what your human design was. Either way, I like stopped you as we were like walking past each other.
Yeah, I think one of our podcaster friends you had met prior to. And
Yes.
we were walking to go have dinner or like go do something with someone else. And we bumped into you and he's like, oh, have you met so-and-so? And I'm like, oh, hey, how's it going? You know, and I think we just started talking and it just started flowing. And then you're like, have you heard of human design? I'm like, I don't know what that is. And then you educated me and like all of a sudden Emily and I now on the 3-hour car ride back to where we live.
Oh my God.
Talked about it the entire I looked up her chart. I looked up her husband's chart. We were looking up everyone's chart in our life. We were like, this makes so much sense now. It's amazing.
I love how I casually just like disrupted your life. This is like my vibe.
In the best way.
Yeah, I love that. Oh no, I loved it. And like you made me feel like such a celebrity. I was like, oh my God, I feel so special. But it also too, like it really helped put a couple things into perspective for me because I was like, oh, this makes a lot of sense. Yes. And like just little odd things that I would notice would be reoccurring comments people would make to me started to click into place. And I was like, wow. So it's been cool to learn about that. But yes.
For those of you that don't know, and if you're listening to my podcast, you probably do know, but for those of you that don't know, I'll put a link to what human design is in the show notes. But our lovely Stephanie here is a reflector, which is extremely rare, like extremely rare. And so when I found out she was a reflector by literally putting her birth information into my phone, because that's how personal I got real quick.
I was like, let's do it.
Give me all your things. I'll tell you what you are. And I like literally couldn't breathe. I was like, oh my goodness. I've only met one other reflector, and she was an amazing photographer on one of the retreats I went on. So it makes sense that you do makeup, by the way. Like you're reflecting our truth back to us. Yeah. And I was like speechless and probably like a cocktail or two in. Let's be clear. Okay. Like I definitely had an exaggerated response, but at the same time, like truly felt how I felt. And what gets me excited, and this is like true honesty. What gets me excited is I know I'm about to change your life. Like when somebody who like whether you're a projector or a reflector or even a manifester, if you're a Manny Gen or a generator, you're like all of us. So Emily, what are you?
I'm a manifesting generator.
Yeah. So you're like the general population. We'll talk about that shortly. But we're like, oh yeah. Like people are kind of like me. I'm different, but we operate similarly. But like projectors, manifestors, and especially reflectors are taught or try to adapt to whatever the general population do. So when I find out somebody is one of those three, I know that when they find out that they actually are meant to operate differently, it frees them from this place of constraint of having to operate like everybody else. So the feeling inside of me is just like, I'm about to give them permission to be themselves. And that's my like little therapist. It's like, woohoo!
So all of a sudden the lights go dark, one spotlight just breaks out into a musical number.
That's pretty much it. Yep. It's like that song that changes everything for all the characters in the story. That's me.
I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was super cool. And it was one of those things that like it even got Emily and I to start talking about, how we, because that's an ongoing conversation for the two of us is how we operate within this podcast. Because it's one thing to do this venture by yourself. It's different to have it with a partner because you do have to meet halfway. And there are going to be things that you're annoyed with, and there's also going to be things that you absolutely adore. Like I could not imagine doing a podcast alone because it just simply the experience that I have and continue to have with Emily is so good and so rich. And to me, that's been the beauty of it. And that's kind of where I feel like we balance each other out. So it was definitely very interesting to like read those charts and then be able to go, oh, and then like read how the two of those things can work together in
Yes.
a more efficient way.
Yes. Emily, did you know you were a manifesting generator before Steph came in and was like, let me tell you about human design?
So I knew what human design was because I remember like a year and a half ago, whenever it became really, really trendy online, I was like, oh, this
Yes.
seems interesting. But I had never done really my chart. I had only kind of heard what the differences were and kind of decided myself what I thought I was. And then when Steph did it in the car for us, it was basically right on. I mean, it was freaky. She was saying the things, and I'm like, oh, okay, wow. Yeah. And my husband's like staring at me, giving me like looks like, you want, yeah, you see, you understand.
But
I'm
then
like,
we
oh,
did his
okay.
chart.
Yeah.
And he was
and
like,
I'm
oh,
staring
well.
at him doing those same looks. I was like, you see, you understand. So it was a very fun car ride. We had a great 3 hours back, just kind of discussing how crazy it is that humans are so different and so similar. It's amazing. But
Love that.
I mean, everything that it was saying was very correct. And like Steph said, it's something that we deal with on a daily basis in our business because we do act and work so differently that it is extremely difficult for me to understand how Stephanie works. And I think it is extremely difficult for her to understand how I work. Right.
Yes.
So it is sometimes the bane of, I think, probably both of our existences that we work so differently because it's frustrating that the other person doesn't work the way that we want them to work. But that's also the beauty of our friendship is that we're able to have these moments where I want to wring Stephanie's neck and like have a conversation instead of it coming to physical violence. As Stephanie winks at me.
You know, I think what it teaches us is patience and understanding. So definitely teaching Emily patience with me and teaching me understanding with Emily.
Yes.
And I think that's what's been cool about it is because you could dismiss somebody super easy and just be like, oh, well, you're just, you're too worried or you're not worried enough. But instead we've taken the time and we check in with each other and we say, hey, like, how are you
doing?
feeling? How are you? Yeah. And Emily's really, really good at reading when I've hit my limit. And I'm also really good at reading when she's hit hers. And there are times where we just have to take a step back and, we send each other little hearts and kissy emojis to be like, hey, still here, still love you. Just got to breathe for a second.
Yeah, it's really interesting how our friendship started without the business being part of it at all.
Right.
And then going into business, seeing how Stephanie acted and how it kind of therefore was starting to trickle into our friendship. So I think that's also been an interesting development to see kind of how we were as friends and now as business partners and friends and how we really have to like work at balancing the two because sometimes I'll have a really hard time like shutting off my cycle chats brain and I'll bring something to her attention at girls night and I'm like, sorry, I know we're not working, but it is 24/7 when you are an entrepreneur and it's just difficult when my brain literally doesn't stop. I can't stop my brain, so I need to regurgitate information that's inside of it. But it is definitely a lovely balancing act that I think we are still working on how to perfect. And I don't know if we're ever going to perfect it entirely, but we're getting there, I think.
That's the fun of it, though, is I think it ebbs and flows and it changes. I would say, so this podcast is all about burning it to the ground and then keeping what resonates and then leaving the rest. For us, I would say it's true that when I mean, I don't know what else to call it other than a mental breakdown towards the mid-pandemic. I think 2 or 3 months later, I got a job in healthcare. And I wasn't even like working physically in it. I was doing the billing. And I just was so lost and miserable. And I just remember the day that like I was looking at a piece of paper like flapping in the breeze of an oscillating fan about some sort of a meeting happening. And all of a sudden it like there's a movie, I believe the movie's called Soul from
Yes.
Pixar,
Yep.
where it's all of the lost souls, and then they like wake up and the guy's like in his job and he looks around and he's like, oh my God,
Yes.
I quit. And then he goes and like lives his life. That's literally what happened. Is I felt like I was one of those walking zombies. And then all of a sudden I like woke up and I realized I had been wasting time. I was like, oh, when I have this, this, and this, I finally made it. Like somehow my life had purpose and meaning if I was married, had kids, had the stable 9 to 5, had the benefits, had all like what I was raised to believe I should have. And also
Yes.
physically how I looked, how I presented myself. Like I wanted to do all these crazy things, but I was like, oh, I have to wait for the right time and the right time and the right time. And all of a sudden I was like, what? Oh my God. And I just remember feeling this overwhelming sensation of, except mine wasn't get out of my chair, clap, and tell everyone to like screw off. It was, I don't know where else to go with this feeling. And just the waves of reality came crushing down. I ended up dealing with some pretty heavy, not wanting to be here thoughts. And I called my parents. And my mom had kind of known in the past I struggled with mental health, but this was the first time that I called my brother and he called my parents because he's like, I'd never heard you talk like this.
Yeah.
And I finally told my dad, because I had never said, I kind of was raised with this thought that like, if you off yourself, you're selfish. And to a certain extent, it's selfish to the people that are still alive because they miss you very much. To someone who's struggling with it, in that moment, you don't realize that it is a permanent solution for a temporary problem. And it absolutely, you can get better and you can advocate for yourself to like pull yourself from those thoughts. Like it's not permanent. And so I finally just told my dad, I was like, I just don't want to be here anymore. I just don't want to be. And I said it. And then I ended up taking time off work, but then the time ended up turning out into me going into the hospital because I was having all sorts of crazy symptoms. And I truly, it was, my body was rebelling.
Yep.
And it was, I had finally hit the point of no return. Like there, it could not go, my anxiety could not go anywhere else. And so I ended up developing an anxiety disorder and panic disorder. And so I went to the hospital twice. And while I was in the hospital the first time, that discharged me the first day, they were like, I don't know, maybe you have heart problems, go to a cardiologist. I'm like, great, thanks. Second time was they kept me for a few days because I was having psychosomatic symptoms, which nerd alert, your body and your brain, when it's trying to protect you from something, will make you have the craziest symptoms. I was like, my one leg was shaking. It's done that one time. It has never done it again since 2 or 3 years ago. Like it's, and there's been a lot of things that I was, they just kind of happen. And it's just your body's way of trying to protect you. It's like a helicopter parent. And the second time I was in the hospital, when I got discharged, I don't think really anyone understood the extent of what was happening. We had this podcast, we had the other business, and we were trying to balance that. And I was already not very present. And I just remember texting Emily and our other friend, and I was like, I need to focus on my mental health. I had never really done that before. And then I felt like Emily texted back and it was very sharp. Now, back story to that, I was supposed to watch her dog, I believe, or your dad's dog. I was supposed to watch somebody's animals, her animals. And it was like 2 days before she was leaving. So she had other things she needed to attend to make sure that that was taken care of. And that was the first time that her and I it had like a moment where she was very frustrated, but that was her being scared. And I had texted her back like, I don't even know what's going on and I'm scared as well. And we grew so much through that because again, it taught us that shit just happens. It just happens, and there is nothing like worrying about it, freaking out about it isn't going to do anything. Shit happens, but the way that you come together to help fix it is what's important. And she was there while she didn't understand totally in the beginning, I didn't even, we actually started learning together,
Mm-hmm.
and it helped us tremendously in our ability to communicate. And I think prior to that, we had been maybe a little bit afraid to
Mm-hmm.
speak up to each other. That eradicated any little piece of that. And so
You burned it to the ground.
we burned all of the way that like people pleasing thing to the ground.
Mm-hmm.
She's more of a sister now than anything. And like I wouldn't even say recently, we don't fight, but like we had a tiff, and I was like, I have to get off the phone because I don't want to say anything mean. She's like, okay, have a good day. And I was like, we didn't talk for the day. And like, she was crying to her husband, I was crying to my mom, and I was like, and then like we wrote each other letters, and we didn't even realize it. And she sent me, she's like, here, I wrote this. And I was like, I wrote this. We literally wrote the same letter.
What?
From like it was about, but the weird thing is it wasn't even about what we had originally gotten into a tiff about. It was about something that had been building.
Wow.
And again, it kind of recalled back to when one of us, we're both try to be superheroes and try to say, I'm fine, I'm fine, I'm fine, I don't need help, I'm an independent woman.
Mm-hmm.
And we have to call each other out on the bullshit and be like, you do need help, it's okay, let me help you. And so like that's something that I feel like helped, because if that was us pre the mental breakdown, I think it would have never even gotten brought up, and it was still built and been passive aggressive and uncomfortable. And instead, we both felt comfortable enough to be uncomfortable for a little bit. And then I felt like I loved her even more, that we were able, like, she's crying, I'm crying, we're crying on the phone, we're reading these letters, we're like, oh my God, it's like, it I don't know. I think those are, don't be afraid to have those moments with people and to get a little messy, because you'll see that the ones who really mean something, the patience, the understanding, the learning together, it happens, and you become better for it. So thank you for coming to my TED Talk. I realized I just took like 15 full minutes to tell this story.
Stephanie, here's the best part. Number one, reflectors are like waves, and I love it so much. So I'm literally being splashed with brilliance. So yes, just like wave away, because then you'll come back, you'll build, and you wave again, right? So we're holding space for you to be authentically you in your full capacity, which means you get to take up time. So that's number one.
Thank you. Number
two, obviously I'm going to have Emily come in and speak here in a moment, but I want to speak to a couple things in between. One of my most powerful tools, I'll say, that I have as a mentor, previous therapist, is bringing women together to connect on a deeply vulnerable level in the midst of mental breakdowns, to co-create an experience of absolute sisterhood in a way that is irreplaceable, because we don't get this real very often. And it's oftentimes a trauma or an experience of catharsis that pulls those walls down. And so having women that get you, can hold you accountable, have seen you through the storm, is a lifeline for all of us that we need. And we've become increasingly isolated as women, and increasingly placed in competition with one another. So part of what I disrupt by creating retreats and circles and the different things that I do is exactly that. So you are both demonstrating the importance of what it looks like to get extremely real with someone, not just because you're in business with one another, but because you're both committed to the long-term vision of being in each other's lives. And that is some real shit, right? I want to say one thing to suicidality. Simply, I'm going to pull my therapist note in here. Number one, thank you for being real and authentic about that. Sometimes it's hard to talk about, and I appreciate your vulnerability. I want to say this because I think there's listeners who will relate to this, and I just want to say it out loud. Suicidal ideation is more common than you think, in the sense of like, I don't want to be here, I don't know what to do, I've reached the end. And our brain naturally pulls up options because we always want to have choice, right?
I just learned that I had a psychologist teach me this. And it brought me an immense amount of comfort in dark moments. Like when that feeling does sometimes pop up, I'm able to be like, we have options. But yes, please continue, because I love this.
But
this
that's
is such a great fact.
It is like, it brings up choices, and one of those choices happens to be death, right? So we get freaked out by that choice. We get panicked about it because we're like, oh my gosh, I've never actually thought of that as a choice before. Now that I'm thinking of it, like there's something wrong with me, and you panic and panic and panic and panic, and you tend to spiral into this place of like real struggle. When the moment of choice comes up, you can accept and embrace and have some compassion for your weary soul that has reached a place of, I'm at a point of no return and I need more choices than just this one. So the question isn't, do I want to live or die? The question is like, I need to find more options because what's working right now, or what I'm doing right now, is no longer working. And this is no longer a choice. This is not a choice I want to make, being death, right? And oftentimes the parts that get scary, where people do turn to actual suicide, is when these choices are like not presented, or they don't have the support to find those choices. They don't have a person to help them guide towards those choices, or they play those choices out and they get the same result. And this is where things get scary, right? So for anybody listening, if you're in these circumstances, number one, know that you're not alone. Number two, know that suicidal ideation is very different than suicidal intent. And that talking to somebody gives you perspective and gives you the opportunity to create different choices, so that no longer are we facing just one and putting our self in a position of panic because of that.
The human brain is one of the coolest things ever. Going through, I would not ever recommend going through, 0 out of 10 would not recommend going through an anxiety disorder. Was not fun. But I will say that it's fascinating when my body mimics. Like I'll be like, well, this is the big one, I guess I'm going to kick it. And then like I don't. And I'm like, wild. You know, it allows you to just see like truly how powerful your brain is. And like, and it makes you more aware. And kind of to speak on real quickly, suicide intent versus suicidal ideation. My one friend, and she's not had an attempt in a very long time, and I'm proud of her for that. But she had attempted it, and I sat with her, and we've grown up since childhood. And I said, what is it like when you think about it? What do you feel? She said, it brings me an immense amount of peace. And because she was kind of coaching me through it, because I'm like, wonder if I do it, wonder if I do it. And she goes, Steph, I think you're dealing with ideation and not what I deal with. She's like, because you're really afraid of it. And she goes, but it's still, both of those things are still valid, and it's still okay to like talk to someone.
Yes.
And weirdly enough, I made a joke. I said, well, if you do it, then I got to do it. And we've got a bunch of people we've just disappointed because we're not here. And she goes, you made that as a joke, but you actually stopped me from doing it because I didn't want you to go through what I go through. And so like reaching out, I think something I want to say is like, reach out to your friends that seem like they've got it all together, because she really did. Beautiful, intelligent, great job, killer body. I mean, like she, like if you looked at her on paper, you're like, my God, what a babe. But she was struggling immensely on the inside. And by just talking to her and like having that time, and even just letting her be there, because she would call me and she'd be like, I'm calling you to tell you that I don't feel good right now, and I just need you to help me get through this moment. That was huge, because she had never done that before, because as we know, depression will make you feel like you're in a club all on your own when there's literally 100 other people that are in the exact same club. Everyone's just faced a different way. You can't see each other, you know. And once you turn around, you're like, oh, I guess I really am not alone, and I'm loved, and just like holding space to just allow her to feel. So that was just a little side.
Well,
Side tangent.
And again, anytime we speak about this in any forum, it's important to provide resources. And I think obviously, like, this conversation, just being able to listen to it, somebody hearing it, is powerful in itself.
Yeah.
And Emily, I'm going to step in here. Number one, I have 2 questions for you.
Okay.
Number one, I just would love your reflections on what Stephanie said and what's like coming up for you. And number 2, when you've completed that task, what did you have to burn to get to where you are today?
Okay. So I lived this with Stephanie. You know, so I've been a part of her journey for, I think it's almost 2.5 or 3 years now since the panic attack and
That's
the anxiety.
weird, huh?
I think it is.
Because sometimes I'm like, oh, it just happened.
No, it didn't just happen. It was at least 2 years ago.
Yeah.
So I have become so much more aware of things. You know, we spoke about this on another podcast, and it almost brought me to tears. I'm going to try not to do that today. But one of my greatest regrets is the fact that I did not mention to Stephanie that I could see that things were bad. And it just, I didn't want it to become a thing where, like, I don't know, she was very, okay. Whoop,
I was also very defensive. It's okay.
I am not
you can
going
be
to cry.
honest.
No, I'm also not going to cry.
You get to cry. This is a therapeutic podcast.
Yeah. But Stephanie and I are very close. She is my best friend. Yep, there it is.
Yep.
And trying to tell somebody that there is something wrong, and then perhaps them shutting you down and maybe not being a part of your life anymore.
Yeah.
Was frightening.
Of course.
Let me get myself together, because my dad gave me a lot of emotions, and I will spiral.
It's okay. I've been in the theater when both of them were crying, and I was sitting in the middle of the two of you.
It's terrible. We're really
guys
bad.
were like,
we're so bad. You really don't want to see theater with my dad and I. It's, I mean, the tears will just, I mean, we are like gorillas. It's terrible.
I think so. I'm gonna. Everybody's listening, like, oh, Colleen's gonna come in. Number one, the language is not terrible. The language it's beautiful. It's expressive. It's an open display of what we are all feeling inside that some of us can't connect to. You are showing us the beauty of feeling a full experience. Never apologize for your tears. Just like I would never tell a child to apologize because they're so excited they just saw Mickey Mouse. I'd be like, oh, you know what? Your tears are terrible. You shut that excitement down right now about Mickey Mouse and shove it right back in your eyeballs. The fact that you feel so deeply about your friendship that it brings you to tears is fucking gorgeous and deserves nothing but that kind of language to describe it, because it's not about losing control. It's not about being too much. It's about being the expression of what we all feel but can't access. And you give us permission by expressing it to feel it deeper in our body. So please, for the love of God, cry and express and emote, because it gives me permission to live a fuller, more expressive life.
You got it. It's going to blow out this microphone. I mean, I swear to you. It's
blow
really,
it.
She's like,
out.
I'm really just trying to make sure.
It's really bad. I was
audio
sitting, fun story. I don't know if anybody knows the play War Horse. They turned it into a movie. I saw it on Broadway, though. It is so sad and beautiful. And for some reason, my brother had gotten my dad and I tickets. I don't know why you would do that to us, but we weren't even sitting together. We were separated, and I was in the first row and he was behind me. So we couldn't hold hands and like commiserate together. And so there I am, this actor's in front of me. They're giving me this beautiful monologue. I'm right there. And I am hysterically crying. I mean, like, I have to get away from the microphone because it's going to be so and they have to keep it together, and I am a mess. I'm hyperventilating. I can't breathe. My dad's behind me. He starts hyperventilating, can't breathe. I mean, it's really bad. When we get going, it's real rough. So in my brain, the other half of Emily in that moment was like, don't blow out the audio. Don't do it. 'Cause I'm a loud crier.
Oh.
I'm not silent. I'm not a princess.
My-
I will feel it throughout my entire body and soul.
That's great though. You must feel amazing when you're done.
It is.
I do.
My clients, my clients are literally laughing on the other side of this. They're like, this is exactly what Colleen forces me to do or tries to force me to do every single session. I call it the ugly cry. It's the full release.
It's the only cry I have.
My
It's
therapist,
really
she does it too. She'll be like, don't stop that. And then the worst is when we're talking, I'm getting to a point and she goes, and like puts her hand on her heart. And,
yes, every time.
And like looks at me and I'm like, it's a mess because it's somebody giving you permission. I actually found that when I'm really starting to feel worked up, Emily did it the other day and I almost lost my sauce. I need to be told, it's okay. You're safe. That's it. And oddly enough, the gentleman I'm dating right now, unbeknownst to him, I was having a moment and he goes, it's okay. You're safe. And I did not tell him that this was something that I needed. And I was like, oh my God. So it just a little shout out because that's such an important phrase. And it's so, I think, and like being able to communicate that that's actually what I needed. I didn't even know that's what I needed, but a friend of mine did it and then like laid on top of me. We'd known each other since kindergarten. So she's like, you're safe. And then just like full weighted it. And I was like, and then I explained it to Emily. She did it. I was frustrated one day. She put her hand on my shoulder and she went, it's okay. You're safe. And I was just like, and then I gave her a big hug. She's like, you're going to be all right. That's it. Sometimes we just need to know, like, we're safe to feel. Because I think often in the world, we're made to feel like it's not safe to feel and something's horribly wrong with you. Sometimes you just have emotions. Just let them come and go. Get on with your day, you know? It's like, don't hold on to them and don't force them down. Just let them be there. They're like a toddler. They'll get tired eventually.
Yeah, 100%. I agree. Emily.
Yeah.
Let us feel it, my dear.
Well, now that I'm over that wave of I let out my ugly cry back there. But yeah, so I think when Steph talks about it now, I reflect back on things that we've been through, where we are now, where I see us in 5 years, where I see us in 10 years, where our business is, where our friendship is, where our lives are. And I have a lot of pride in how far we've come. So I think it's just like immense amounts of pride and then like that little tinge of regret. Like, I wonder if this would have happened if I would have done A, B, and C.
Probably. Let me just put your mind at ease that I think it was going to happen at some point.
Yeah, regardless. Yeah.
And I think the pandemic just pushed it over the edge a little bit because I even knew. I mean, anytime I tell the story to someone who's known me from the past, they'll be like, you? An anxiety disorder? Never would have guessed. And I'm like, okay, here, I got 2 middle ones here for you. Because I always displayed symptoms of just being very hypervigilant. But I also was trained to be like, I'm fine. So, but now Emily will straight up just be like, breathe, take a break, slow down. Like, she's not afraid to use the language. So kudos to you, my love.
Yes, you've adapted and learned and grown.
Me.
But wait, you had asked another question, and I'm curious, Emily. What'd you burn down? Yeah, what's your burn?
What'd you have to burn?
I've had to burn a lot. I am the youngest child of 3. Both of my older siblings are men, and so being the only girl, being the youngest, there was a lot of things that I was told growing up, and absolutely no shame on my parents. Our parents are only doing the best that they can. But my dad had a lot to say of how I should act and how I should be, and what he wanted as a daughter. So I did a lot for that and was like, okay, I have to be this way to be accepted. I've always been weird and quirky. I mean, I was 5 years old and hanging out with 15-year-olds because my brother's 10 years older than me, my oldest one. And like that to me was super normal. So I grew up really fast and I didn't have a lot of friends my age. And if I did bring a friend over, my dad would like watch us very carefully. And if he saw the fact that they were like telling me what they wanted to do and not asking what I wanted to do, my dad would pull me aside and be like, you are never allowed to see that person again. Because he didn't like the fact that I was being taken advantage of by these people. So I just grew up in a weird, normal, in quotation marks, family, like everybody, right? We all had our own ish. And so I grew up really believing that I had to fit into these certain boxes. And then I got to like high school and I let it out a little bit more. My weird, it would like kind of come through every now and again, but I was still straightening my hair. I put on makeup every day. I had to have the hot boyfriend. And then once college started, I did a summer theater program where I worked backstage and I met my two best friends, one of which just had a baby. And that's amazing. And we were talking one day and one of my friends was like, why don't you just like let it out? And I was like, what? And she was like, yeah, you're weird. You should just be weird. And I was like, nah, I can't do that. That would be too weird. She was like, no, you should like really do this. I was like,
who is this?
I'll think about it. It's Sarah.
Oh, okay.
I always thank her for it. It's like the person that was like, it's okay. Be weird, little bird. It's good.
Yes.
And I was like, okay. And I thought about it and I was like, I'm gonna try. So then sophomore year, that was my freshman year summer. I went back to school sophomore year. I started to wear my hair curly, which I hadn't done. I just started to like be me. And if people didn't like it, then I did still like try and fit that box, especially in that friend group in college. I had a whole lot of like girlfriends that I lived with for many, many years. And my nickname was Mom with them because I was the caretaker. I always have been. I am a nurturer. I want to help people. It's my love language is acts of service. So I took care of them. I was the DD. I would pick them up for parties, hold back their hair. I mean, like everything that I would make them breakfast in the morning, everything that a mom would do, I took care of it for them. And then college ended. They never left college, like mentally. And I was like, I'm done with this. I am ready to move on. I went to grad school. I was surrounded by other artists that also wanted to like do this professionally and that were weird. And I was like, oh, okay, I can do more of this. So I started doing more and showing weird even more. And I got weirder and like, that's just who I am. And then grad school ended. I stopped talking to those girls on like a weekly, daily basis. I mean, they had like a text chain going and I would get like 300 text messages when I was in class. And I was like, I can't do this anymore. I couldn't keep up. And then after a while, they just stopped including me on the text chain. It was like, I understand. I'm moving on. You have moved backwards. I don't really know. And I was like, I'm not going to do that anymore. Grad school ended. I was planning on moving away out of Florida and doing the acting thing elsewhere in Philly. I met my husband though, so that plan went to the shitter. And
you burned it.
Then yeah, I burned that plan. Found a lovely man who accepted all my weirdness instead and puts more weirdness on top of it. And he's the best. I mean,
the two of them
really,
together are so bizarre, and it's fabulous. I'll just sit there and
it's
be
really
like,
good.
Wow.
Yeah, he knows
Mom
exactly
and
what I
Dad.
need. It's great. It makes me very happy.
He's really good at like
very good at putting me
he'll
in my
call
place.
her out on stuff.
Yeah,
it's amazing.
Yeah,
no,
yeah. He's like, did you take a break yet? And I'm like, no, I haven't. He's like, great, go sit down for 15 minutes because he knows I can't stop. So
She's like,
he like, Yeah.
Okay.
So he's really good, which I need.
All right, I will.
But then I think my biggest bridge was the pandemic, honestly. I think it just kind of helped me shed all of these last little connections that I had to my past self where I was just serving others and not being free to be me. And I let go of a lot of friendships that didn't serve me anymore. And I still sometimes will be like, oh, was that the right thing to do? But it was, and I moved forward, and now I'm just me. And I think teaching also was a big part of it because the pandemic happened. I was like, I need to make money. I got a teaching job at a college, and that was hugely crucial to my development, being a college teacher with these kids looking up to me as mentor, therapist, professor. That was huge because then I just had this crazy awakening moment the other day in my class, and these three girls who are beautiful, like by the book definition of what pretty is, they would be there. These are girls that 15-year-old Emily would have died to be friends with. I mean, I would have given anything. If Ursula was there and she wanted my voice, I would have given it to her to hang out with these girls. I mean, they were like the popular girls, and there I am. So they come up to me and they're just mesmerized, and they're like, oh my God, we're so excited to take your class. They were really speaking so highly of me. They were like, we can't wait to go on this journey. You make it seem so fun. You're approachable, blah, blah, blah. And they walked away, and I was like, oh, wait a minute. They want to be me. Yeah. That's weird. That's super weird.
It's wild, huh?
And so it was just totally eye-opening. And now I just don't give a shit. I mean, I literally love teaching my college kids. I like giving it to them straight. I tell them that we need to talk about things and we have conversations, and all of that is reflected back on me, and I get to impart my own wisdom and then take things away that I learned. So I'm continuous. I'm like a sponge. I like to take things in and absorb new parts of myself. So I am still on that journey, but I have burned. I think that self-image thing that was holding me back for a long time.
Yes. Ooh. I love a story of just full self-ownership. When you just, it takes time. You're kind of sloughing off the pieces that somebody tried to put on you. Maybe good-natured father, but at the same time, that reclaiming of your full uninhibited self is just so terrifying and extremely rewarding. Because when you step into those spaces and you really fully own who that person is, it's almost like, I think about it, it's like the universe co-creates with you, to just continue to put things in your life. And when you take that misstep, or you make that decision that's out of alignment or is based on a past fact of what you thought you should be, you get that stop sign. And I think when we're talking about Manny-Gen energy as well, your job is to kind of figure out those edges. Really, what is the edge for you here? Okay, there it is. Now I take a step here, and then I go here and I take a step here. As a generator, I'm like the immovable mountain. I just go down this one path of mastery, and I'm like, this is me.
Yeah.
And I love watching that self-ownership of who we're supposed to be and the energy we're supposed to bring, because it makes the world just such a safe place to be in. Those young ladies felt so safe to be themselves because you are fully encapsulating what it looks like to be yourself. And so they want to feel that inside. And that is just so beautiful to have it reflected back to you and have you experience that. So I appreciate you sharing.
You do that, Emily. You're so yourself. That's something I always praise her on, because it's something that I've discovered more recently, is Emily just always had this secure sense of who she was from the day that I met her. And she never wavered. She never changed. It was never, very rarely would you see her insecure. And it was never about her. and the way that she presented herself. It was about other stuff, but it was so, because she met me at a place where I wasn't like, what you see now is what I've always wanted to be, but I wasn't there yet, and I was too afraid to be there. And so I would say that she was a very intricate part in one of the people I surrounded myself with that gave me permission to just like do whatever you want. Like, I wanted to cut my hair short. And I remember being very afraid to do it. And she was one of the first person. I was like, "What do you should I keep it a little longer?" She goes, "Cut it short, go for it."
What's gonna happen?
And I did it. And it was the first time, like, this is the shortest I've ever gone. But like prior to, my hair was like past my boobs, and I like did it up to the tip of my shoulders. And that was huge. That was scary for me. But like, I felt so confident because I had somebody hyping. She saw it. She's like, "Oh my God, you look so good." And like, that's what you need.
She
You
called
need
me when I was
people.
naked in the shower today, and I told her.
Yeah,
how
I showed her today. I was like, "What do you think?" Because I was a hair model. I would have never sat down and been like, "Chop it off." You know, it's like, it's, yeah. So I always give kudos to Emily for that, because it's very inspiring to be around, and it's also great for kids to see too. And I know for her students respect her immensely because of it.
Absolutely.
I hope
what
so.
a leadership
I hope
position.
they leave. Yeah,
I think
I
so.
try. It's
Also
it's
your
difficult.
hair.
College
Everyone's
kids are
like,
hard. What, my hair?
oh yeah, I mean, anytime we're out, people are like, "My God, that hair, stunning!" Like,
Yeah,
she's a
you kind of
showstopper.
can't miss me in a room.
I mean, I
Not with the
don't
hair.
have ugly friends, so
oh, ladies. Okay, so if someone is listening and they're like, I want to hear these women talk more, I want to know what they're about, I want to get into the nitty-gritty with them, how can they find you? What are you doing?
I love this question because I ask this question on our show. You can find us over at www.cyclechats.com. We have a newsletter that you can sign up for. We just started launching. It'll give you kind of a play-by-play of what we've accomplished in the past month and what you can look forward to. It'll also let you know about some of our partnerships that we have with non-for-profits, which is very, very important to us. We are partnered with one currently. So if you go to our website, you can go to our store and you can either support us with the merch that we have or purchase something that 75% of the proceeds go to that non-for-profit. So it's just something I want to put out there. But if you want to listen to our show and you want to get in touch with us, we do have a button there on the website that'll take you right to our stuff. You can also find us on pretty much any streaming platform that has a podcast. We're also on YouTube, where we do a show called Chit Chats, and that's just the two of us. There's also a video, so if you want to see our faces, you can do that. And we're on Instagram. That's where we're the most active. And you can message us, Cycle Chats, again with an S, all lowercase, no space. And when we say DM us, we mean it. We're not just like DM us and then like never answer. Oop, I hit my computer. We really mean it. It's like DM us. We absolutely adore talking with people and having like educated conversation. So yeah, I think that's everything. Emily, do you have any?
Yeah, no.
Was that it?
You hit all the major things. Not for profits, our Instagram, our website,
and and TikTok. We're slowly building up our TikTok, but we've got some really, really fun adventures coming up.
Yeah, I just came up with a great idea.
So,
I don't understand TikTok, but I understand.
We should follow each other because I'm brand new on TikTok too. It's hilarious.
Yeah, I don't get it. Stephanie can scroll on it for 3 hours. I literally am like, I don't get this.
Time travel.
I don't understand.
It is an entertaining space, especially like the algorithm can take you to some strange places. So
sometimes I can tell what my mental health is by the algorithm, and I'm like, okay, we got to get off this app now. I got to go touch grass.
Yes, it's so true. It's so true. Oh, it has been an absolute pleasure. I appreciate you coming on, getting real with me, talking about what's really put you in the position today to be the leaders that you are. I am so excited for my listeners to go check out your podcast because they're going to learn so much. And just to have two women who have been through it, who've gotten real, and who are really living the life of authenticity. You know, like that's amazing to witness and to be a part of. So thank you so, so much for being on the show.
Oh,
Thank you. This was great. And thank you for making it a very comfortable space for us.
Yeah.
So we do have to give that back to you
Give
because
you shout outs.
you made it
Yeah.
very easy to share. I actually a couple times forgot we were even in an interview to remind myself, because I was like looking down, I was listening, like, you know, like I was on a phone call, and I was like, wait a second, we're on a video call. So thank you.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we're excited to have you on our show.
It's true.
At the end of this month. Yeah.
Can't wait. I cannot wait. Oh, okay. I will put all of their amazing stuff in the show notes, but thank you so much for being on. And until next time, we will continue to let the rest burn.